then to the GTR24H podcast talk show. You'll very quickly see that I've got a new guest straight beside me. We're not messing about today. Alex Goldschmidt joins me for this next stage of the podcast. Alex, it's great to have you in the studio.
Good morning, Kieran. Good to see you as well. A well-needed rest after yesterday's exciting two-stage qualifying session here at Le Mans for the EEWC 2021 finale. Thanks for having me on, mate. It's really good to be able to actually chat face-to-face rather than on the other side of a webcam, isn't it?
That's very true. That is very true. Well, let's start when it all first started for yourself. How did you get into motorsport? Do you remember your first race?
Yes, I do, actually, funny enough. And I'm going to go way back into the archives. Way back into Master Lays brings us back again. I'm going to go back to a little bit further down the archives. First race I ever watched, the Monte Carlo Grand Prix 1988, when Ayrton Senna da Silva and the Professeur Alain Prost, now who is a special advisor for Alpine Formula One team these days, were battling it out tooth and nail for the World Championship at McLaren. You had the likes of Gerhard Berger, Riccardo Patrese, Nelson Piquet, Elioni Arnage, Nigel Mansell, amongst others. It was a halcyon day for Formula One, and I still remember my dad just said, "Look, do you want to ever watch a Formula One?" And I knew about Formula One as a youngster because some of my friends at school would tell me about it, but I'd never watched a full race. And just to see the way that Ayrton would dance that car like it was cornering on rails, going sideways through Casino, through Piff Pat for about 150 miles an hour. And even when he crashed at Poitiers just before the tunnel and then stormed off over to his Monte Carlo apartment, literally ripping the earplugs out of his ears, balaclava off, looking back as if to say, I really didn't do well there, did I? That was the first race I ever remember watching.
So we're talking late 80s, early 90s for your first foray into motorsport. Would you say at that point, did you have any idols in motorsport?
Well, predominantly for the late 80s and the early 90s, Ayrton was the driver for me. The reason being, it wasn't about the fact of, back in those days when you're 11 years old, you don't really have an inkling or an idea of what political situations there are in motorsport. You're just enjoying the racing, and it was brash, it was brutal, it was visceral, it was in your face. It was like assaulted all senses, and that was a halcyon day in Formula One when drivers were absolutely crazy to get those race helmets on, but what they provided. And this was at the time when Michael Schumacher came in, when he made his debut at Spa-Francorchamps in 91 with Eddie Jordan in the 7-Up Jordan car, and then promptly was signed by Flavio Briatore to go to Benetton. And as they say with Michael, the rest is history.
Absolutely. So obviously we're talking Michael Schumacher, a very long career from 1991, well, two stints, 91 to 06, and then 2010.
Yeah, when he made his return alongside Nico Rosberg with the team formerly known as Brawn GP, rescued from the ashes of Honda by Ross Brawn, and I'm trying to remember. I know it was Nick, but I can't remember his second name. I might have to Google
Nick
that.
Fry?
That was it, Nick Fry. They literally bought Honda off of the team off of Honda for a seminal. I think it was like a token £10, and the amount of work that went behind the scenes. That was one of the Phoenix rising from the ashes stories in Formula One, and then it evolved to what we see now, Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula One with Sir Lewis Hamilton, now a 7-time world champion, over 100 victories in Formula One, the most successful pole sitter in Formula One. The statistics that Lewis has done, he is very clearly the driver of his generation, and he's batting for an 8th world title with Max Verstappen in the Red Bull Racing Honda crew, and I'll be completely honest with you, the season that we're seeing now in Formula One takes me back to the 90s. It really does, because you just don't know how it's going to play out, and there's 5 races to go in the calendar.
And we talked a lot about Formula One.
Yeah.
Let's open it up. Let's broaden it to multiple disciplines of motorsport. Are there any other disciplines you follow?
Well, of course, for those that do know of me and that are probably watching as we speak, a very good morning. Karting. Karting is a sport that I am very, very deeply immersed in, not just as a commentator, but also as a content creator. I work in social media as well. Karting, and I'm going to go a little bit of a slight, not a backtrack, but a sort of a correlation. One particular time when Ayrton Senna was interviewed, they said, "Who was your biggest rival?" For those karting fans out there, those karting historians, the name Terry Fullerton rings a bell with a lot of people in the karting community. Ayrton was running as Terry's teammate before Ayrton moved over here over to the UK. Didn't speak a word of English. Raced in Formula Ford. Went to Formula 3000 when he had that great ding-dong battle with now Sky Sports colour commentator Martin Brundle. And I still remember when Ayrton ended up going for a gap and he ended up on the top of Martin's F3000 car. Karting is a sport that I really, really do enjoy. And the reason being is that you have a very friendly, open paddock. People can come in and spectate for free. There's none of this having to pay X amount of money for a weekend, or it's just clean, it's wholesome, it's pure racing, and I've seen some great talents come through. Funny enough, two drivers who are actually racing with us this weekend, Azatec Sim Sports, Lagim Ali and Valdemar Eriksson, both raced with RS Competition. Robert Schlunson, who's known within not just the Danish racing community but European and German. Great guy. Robert actually made a comeback this year in Danish Super GT and decided to get behind the wheel, which is really cool to see. But karting is one of the ones that I follow. I sort of switched between series. I followed the DTM for a long time, back from the days when you had when Absportline was not a factory team, but they had the Audi TT-RS with the Hasseröder bright yellow livery. You had Laurent Aiello, Matthias Ekström in there. Timo Scheider, I know very, very well. Timo is the only driver, 2007, 2008, I think, if memory serves me correctly, to have successfully defended titles until René Rast, who's now a 3-time DTM champion. And actually, René was the last Class 1 DTM champion, because DTM, it went a bit full circle for DTM, because they had the ITC back in the mid-90s. You had Dario Franchitti, Michael Schumacher was in there as well, a whole host of names, and that's when teams were spending, like Alfa Romeo, Mercedes-Benz, Opel, they were spending tens of millions of euro of marks, or whatever currency was at the time. These cars, I mean, if anyone might remember the Alfa 155 Ti, Alessandro Nannini was one of their drivers, and I still remember they were at Avus, which was a semi-permanent street circuit in Berlin, capital city of Germany. I still remember when Nannini was going through the chicanes. Well, it wasn't exactly a chicane. It was like literally a straight bit with two outer curbs. And you'd see these cars completely aerodynamically efficient underneath, a huge whopping great diffuser at the back of the car, sparks flying everywhere. It was a golden time of DTM. And then we had the same thing where the ICC ran for 2 seasons. We've had that recently with DTM. They brought in Class 1, which is aligned with the Japanese Automobile Federation Super GT Championship that Jenson Button won back in 2018 with Honda. And then now DTM has basically become a GT3 spec series. British touring cars, what endurance, there's some great racers in there. There's a lot of great drivers that have moved over to there and had great success. I mean, transfers from Formula 1 include Mark Webber, Nico Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg's been recently testing with McLaren Arrow SP over in IndyCar. IndyCar's really come on my radar this year. Like the amount, Alex Palou, second year in the championship, has gone and won it with one of the biggest teams, Chip Ganassi. You've got other drivers in there. Romain Grosjean just recently signed with Andretti Autosport to drive the DHL 28 car, as Ryan Hunter-Reay now goes to, I think, IMSA. He's looking at drives there. there are so many different championships. You get spoiled for choice these days.
You do, you really do.
Yeah.
So let's take you back then. First into your role in commentary. Where did it all start? How did it all start?
There's actually a little bit of a history behind this. I've been in motorsport now for 11 years. This is my 11th year. Started back in 2011. A good friend of mine, Charlie Barnes, she got me in touch with someone by the name of Chris Derra, based up in Birmingham. They were running a pop culture website called Pop Fodder. They were looking for new writers. And at this point, commentary was not on my radar. So I got asked by Chris, can you send me over a 1,500-word article on whatever subject you chose? I can't remember the article because I've slept a lot since then. And he said, yeah, let's get you on board. They already had a Formula 1 writer, so I did MotoGP and WRC. And thanks to Lauren Vickers, I got the chance to actually send some email questions to Randy Depunier, French MotoGP rider, now running in FIM Endurance these days. Randy was part of the Suzuki test squad for the new MotoGP team that we have nowadays, as MotoGP has evolved over the years. And I then, in 2012, that's when I really started getting absolutely both feet deep first, both feet first, out of the frying pan into the fire with DTM. Went, and then 2013, I was with the checkered flag at that time. I went to Brands Hatch Indy. Interesting name that the German drivers give to Brands Hatch Indy when DTM was going. They call it the Honda Marathon. Basically, they were doing nearly a century of laps around the 1.2 mile circuit. That same year, and that was when Andy Priaulx was racing in DTM with the Crown Plaza BMW M3 DTM. Then went to Zandvoort for my first, and like within a couple of years, it was my first ever European assignment. And this was at the point where I was working for free. And that particular round, it was such a great weekend, because I actually then went and had a week and a half holiday in Den Bosch, which is about a couple of hours away from Zandvoort. So got in my car, in my Volkswagen Jetta, got on the ferry at Harwich International, got off at Hoek van Holland, and then drove to Zandvoort. And that weekend, you know when you have a weekend that you think, this is really cool, and this is when Dieter Gass was head of the DTM project before he took over from Dr. Wolfgang Ulrich as head of Audi Motorsport. Dieter actually invited me to have dinner with him at the Audi Sport Hospitality, and like as a journalist, it wasn't the fact it was the journalist in me. It was like saying, oh my god, and Dieter Gass has just invited me to dinner. And I eventually said, I'll see what I can do. He even invited me to the after party. Well, the thing was, you had a media pass, you could go into a hospitality and eat for absolutely free, and it was like my first real wide eye-opener. Then I did Formula 1 British Grand Prix 2014, when we had the Pink for Papa weekend on the Sunday with the late John Button, Jensen's dad, having recently passed. And I remember that was a cool weekend. I was in the press conference where you had Lewis, you had Nico, and one of the documents that I actually have at home is the transcripted press conference from qualifying that weekend. Because if you might remember, Mercedes dropped the ball when it came to Lewis Hamilton. He qualified P6. Both Mauritius, Shubianki and Max Chilton qualified into Q2. Both of them that weekend. And I asked the question to Jensen Button. I said, you're qualifying, you're P3. Seems like instead of Lewis, you've become the great British hope this weekend, And I still have that document to this day. I'm going to fast forward a couple of years now. 2015 was when I really started to get involved in commentary. And for me, I met a guy by the name of Jake Sanson, who's the founder of Downforce Radio. Jake's currently over in Campillos for the FIA World Karting Championships for OK and OK Senior. And luckily enough, I spotted on his Instagram that he had a quick catch-up with former Formula 1 driver, former Formula E driver, and now CIK FIA president, Mr. Felipe Massa. Jake and I met up at the Autosport show in Birmingham. It was my third visit, and I was with, I can't remember who I was with, whether I was with Checkered Flag or TouringCars.net. We had a chat, and I felt a bit of a kindred spirit, like a brother that I'd never had. He said, maybe you want to join the team. A couple of months later, we had a chat on the phone, and I joined and started doing some ad hoc commentary, but it wasn't like on the scale where you go onto circuit comms and end up doing the circuit commentary for the people that are actually at track. I was doing it like, say, a hospitality suite or from an area where I was able to be there and no one would have to disturb me. Then 2017, things really started going up a gear. And I have to say a big thank you to one particular man who knows us here at GTR24H and has been on the commentary crew, Chris McCarthy. Buddy, I know you're over in Italy at the moment for the Formula Regional Championship powered by Alpine, so well done. Great job to see you doing that. Chris got me the opportunity to commentate at Rye House, and Daytona D-Max swiftly followed. 2018, this is where things really kicked up another gear. The volume went from 9 to 11 at the snap of her fingers. Chris phones me 2 weeks before the April bank holiday weekend and said, Alex, fancy a trip to Genk? I went, Belgium? Yeah. He said, karting Genk, the home of champions. This is like a one weekend job. I said, I'm game. Went over there. And this was when I was still in full-time employment. I took the Friday off because I wanted to make a bit of a road trip. So I went in my Volvo and got the ferry. Should have booked the ferry a little bit earlier because I didn't get to Zoeterdaal, which is like 10 minutes outside of Genk, until midnight. Guy who I still work with to this day, Servus Mike Wagner from Camp Company GmbH. I've worked with him ever since. He said, so Alex, breakfast is at 7, we'll be at the track at 7:30. And I thought this was my opportunity to really just go and see what happens. I did every practice session. I went full boring qualifying. I did every single heat. And I didn't really have a rest apart from 20 minutes at lunch. And I was still doing 10-eye announcements for calling drivers to race control or stewards or whatever. We're sitting down to dinner. And like I've got a proper like big schnitzel with pommes, a big Stein, because like I thought, you know what, I've absolutely earned this. And Mike goes to me, Alex, so you think you can do the whole season? I had 9% on my battery, and I looked at my calendar and I went, yeah, I can do it. That now means that 2022, I go into my 5th season with Mike as the official Rotax Max Euro Trophy commentator. These days, it's Rotax Max Euro Trophy, BNL Karting Series here at GTR24H. A big thank you to Nick Newcomb for giving me a message last September asking me if I could do the Le Mans season finale last year. I was in Adria that same week and I had to say no because I'd already committed. Funny enough, esports really came onto my radar courtesy of COVID-19, and started working with David, like the Easting Brit GT Challenge, working with yourself on World Pro Racing, Chris Buxton, Yusuf I met through GTR24H. I've done the Scottish Motor Racing Club iRacing Summer Series. I've worked with the likes of Lewis McGlade and David and Andy McEwen on SimGrid. And that's really how my journey has evolved to where I am now.
So I'm glad you mentioned sort of what happened in 2020, because the question I wanted to ask you, what was the challenge? You know, when we get to March in the UK, there's the lockdown. It's a bit of an unknown. I mean, what happened with yourself there? How did that affect you?
Well, it affected me twofold, Kieran. Firstly, I was working full time. I was working for a company that is based as an automotive industry services provider. So I was put on furlough. Then also, the opportunity of going back over to Europe was curtailed. The first week of the lockdown in the United Kingdom, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was like a mentally broken man. But then after that week, after I got over that initial sort of, cloud cover in my head, things started changing. And I have to give my friend Darren S. Cook a very, very big shout out, because one of the teams that we have here, GTR24H, is E-Team Brit in LMP2. Well, I know their sister team. I know the bloke who runs it, Dave Player. And Dave, congratulations on the British GT news. Bobby Trunley and Aaron Morgan running in GT4. They are now an official McLaren customer racing team. The car looks absolutely awesome, and I know Bobby very, very well. I met Bobby back in Daytona D-Max, and he won. He's like a 5-time Daytona D-Max champion. His media skills are a hell of a lot better than they were in 2017. But Darren said, get in touch with Dave Player. They've got a summer series, they need a commentator. And I messaged Dave and I said, look, I'm really, really interested. All I want is an E-Team Brit t-shirt and I'll do it. And then the floodgates started to open. The Team Brit Summer Series then evolved into the E-Team Brit GT Challenge, which is now in its 3rd season, with myself and David. Funny enough, I was looking for a co-commentator for Season 1, and Season 1 and Season 2 were done on R Factor. So I thought, who do I know of that could really make it work? And I said to David, I said, you fancy jumping on board? He's like, yeah. And out of all the people I work with in esports, David is the one that I have a kindred spirit with. We know exactly how each other ticks. We know exactly how to counter-react to whatever the other person says. And yeah, I then got made redundant. 1st of September, I went self-employed the month later. And here I am, in Middelfart, in Denmark, with a fantastic crew. And esports was on my radar, but not to the point where I thought, yeah, I'll see what happens in a couple of years. COVID-19 accelerated that plan by well over 2 years. And if I'm completely honest with you, every single step of the way, I've really enjoyed it.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, the fact that you're enjoying it makes up for everything. Would you say throughout your entire career so far, are there any commentators that influenced you, or were there any commentators you thought, I like their style?
There are so many fantastic commentators, and I know that David's already mentioned a few, and I'm going to go through them. John Hindle, Radio Le Mans. David Addison, that man is an absolute machine. Like, the amount of knowledge that he's got, the amount of the way he comes across. Bruce Jones, another one of the radio. You know, I think everyone at Radio Le Mans, Paul Truswell, Joe Bradley, Shay Adam, they bring so much to the broadcast. It's you asking me that question is like me trying to ask me what sauce I want with my chips. The thing is that there are so many people that have really, really influenced how I operate as an individual. But the person that stands out above all else is the late great Murray Walker. He was the one that I heard, whose voice I heard first. And then when James Hunt came along, it was a double team for the ages. I don't, there's other people out there as well. Paul O'Neill, our Owie. He is brilliant, because the thing is, he can lead a broadcast, but he can also provide... Tim Harvey's another example of that as well. When you get drivers that have decided to curtail their racing career, and then there are some that can pull it off, there are some that can, to an extent, and then there are some that probably might not feel so comfortable doing it. But, you know, Billy Munger's another example, alongside Alex Jakes, one of the newest talents. He was on my radar when he started doing F2 and F3. And this is one that is probably going to surprise a lot of people. Will Buxton. Will Buxton. I mean, to be thrown out of the frying pan and into the fire when it was Bruno Michel that actually contacted him. I went, hey, Will, we've got no commentator. He just literally just went in and was himself. And I still, it's great. It's really, really cool, because you get so many different people that add such a kaleidoscope of colour when it comes to commentary. There are so many great talents out there, so many people that have established themselves over the years. It is difficult to pick like say 5 or 10 people, but my top 3 are David Addison, John Eindel, and Murray.
Three great commentators. I have to say that's a very powerful list there. So let's sort of get to circuits, because obviously you've been to karting circuits, you've been to I believe you've been to motorsport circuits as well, across the UK and across Europe. Where would you say would be your favourite place to go? Is there a circuit in particular you turn up and you think, yes, we're going to have some great racing here because this is a fantastic track?
There's 3. I know I'm sounding greedy, but
take 3. Go for it.
Okay. And one of which I've actually three of which I've visited. First one is Hockenheimring, the current 4.574 kilometre circuit. I've been there 3 times. 2013, 2015 and 2016. I was there as a reporter for the DTM. I was there and you know when you get such great 2013, of all people that walks past me before he ends up going up to where he is now, I walk along past the Mercedes-Benz hospitality. There's Jos and Max Verstappen when Max was still with Van Amersfoort, and he still had his Red Bull. He had the Red Bull overalls, because with Van Amersfoort they have a very different colour scheme. Esteban Ocon I walked past, and he was bloody tall back then. I think one of the seminal moments was that, and this man, I hope he's watching, and I've interviewed him several times, the legend that is Tom Christensen. It's 2016. Marco Wittmann had won the title that year, and it was the farewell party for Antonio Felix da Costa, who's now with Autosport in WEC and LMP2, and DS Techeetah alongside Jev in Formula E. Tom's like, I'd met Tom a couple of years earlier. I interviewed him. It's a funny story. I'll come on to that in just a second. We were there, and it was after the Autosport show where we'd originally met, and it was really cool. I was thinking, I'm standing next to Tom Christensen, and we're saying we've got a farewell party for 2 drivers that are leaving DTM. There's a couple of really funny stories that have come out of me going to DTM at Hockenheim. I was there for 2014 when Marco won the title, and I still have a picture to this day in my archives that Mercedes had their end of season dinner. Uli Fritz was drunk as a skunk, singing as he was walking towards the BMW hospitality. Maxi Goetz, who's still to this day, credit where credit is due, where's the old snapbacks? He'd taken the 3-pointed star, they got a lot of blue gaffer tape, put it around his neck, so it was like the Maxi Goetz Beastie Boys tribute band. Mauro Engel was there. And I remember the press conference that Marco Wittmann said, I'd like to invite everybody to the party. Literally, you say that in a media conference and the drivers see it, they're there. It was properly mad. 2016, and the funny thing is that I have to say, there's one guy who I really, really do miss in terms of a good friend and a good colleague, Ollie Kaffenstein. Unfortunately passed away quite recently in the last couple of years. Actually, it was last year, and I was hoping to go and see him go and visit him in Stuttgart. He passed away suddenly. We didn't all see it coming. I'm not too sure of the incidents of what happened. He left behind a wife and 3 children, and his colleague Marlene Wieland, who I know very, very well. She organised a GoFundMe page, and I told my mum and dad, and between us we put about €200 in just to help the family out. The money didn't matter to us. It was like I'd lost a very, very good friend, and we kept in touch. I still have his number in my phone to this day. And I remember, I think it was Danny Hunkadea. Danny Hunkadea. And somebody else, I think it wasn't when Lucas Auer was in the championship, because it might have been. No, it wasn't. Lucas Auer joined the team a little bit later, but Christian Vittoris. That's the name that you don't really hear bandied about anymore. Who now actually has his own koi carp farm in Germany. he has it's pretty cool when you see the different interests for racing drivers outside of motorsport arenas and how normal they are as people. So yeah, a couple of the team from Mercedes, a couple of the hospitality lot decided to take the three-pointed star off of Max's chest. They went up to the top of the BMW hospitality and there was like a congratulations poster for Marco. They decided to double-sided tape three-pointed star to the window on the outside of the hospitality. And then I took a picture and I was absolutely giggling, and I said to Ollie, Ollie, newsflash for next year, Wittmann switches to Mercedes. and that was really cool. I mean, yeah, Hockenheim, and then the other story aligned with Hockenheim is that 2016, okay, Marco won his second title. My friend, I have to say a good shout out to my friends Tamara and the crazy Catalan that is known as Abel Cruz. We went to the BMW hospitality. Marco Wittmann partied hard that night. Jaegers, Steins, anything and everything. I think I even saw. I had a chat with Augusto Vargas. He said, "Yeah, man, I've got to go home to the wife and kids, and yeah, I'll see you soon." And I could see like Antonio Felix da Costa after that was egging him on to. The thing is that if you are the DTM champion, you have to make an appearance on German breakfast television. Marco Wittmann got so drunk he missed the call. He missed the wake-up call, and it made news. And also along with that, the story I was talking about with 2014 with Mercedes, Spot 1, when DTM Hockenheim, Mercedes crashes BMW's party. Well, hang on a second, that was completely wrong. You're just clickbaiting it right there, because everyone saw in the press conference that Marco gave an open invitation. Mercedes definitely said, we're taking full advantage of that. so Hockenheim's the first circuit. Le Mans. I've got nothing else to say apart from the fact that it is a fantastic circuit. I've commentated the international karting circuit, which is actually stuck just off the Ford chicane. And then to the right of it, you've got the Circuit Alain Prost, which is where the 24-hour karting events happen there. Le Mans, for me, is... I would not call it a motorsport circuit. It's like the Colosseum of sports car racing. Modern day gladiators with modern day weapons of arsenal at their choice, going around a 13.626 kilometre circuit at breakneck speed, laps under 3 minutes 30 in like the top tier classes. But to actually be there 3 weeks before this year's Le Mans event was awesome. And one of the nice little quaint things was, there was a couple of things. I actually drove down the Mulsanne, going past the Uno Diaz chicanes, and it's really funny because down the Mulsanne, these, like the cars we're seeing racing here this weekend on GTR24H, they're pushing 330 kilometers an hour. The speed limit on that road, get this, 80 kph. And it was like, I was like, you got like, say, you got Metallica thrash music going down the Mulsanne in an LMP2 car. In a road car, it's like dun, 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 dun. You feel like you're Fred Flintstone and Barney's alongside you.
Right, go on. How tempting is it then to just push the needle above 80?
They don't like it.
No.
And you know what? One of the real interesting characters of this circuit going down the Mulsanne, you see everything. I saw a wine bar. I saw a tire company. I even saw like people selling concrete and conservatories and stuff like that. It's so cool. And with regards to, like, say, Indianapolis, that is part of the road layout around the circuit. It really, really is. And I went through it. I was like, oh, it's Indianapolis. Oh, there's a curve. And you just hear that. It was awesome. I mean, like, I even recorded an 11-minute video where I'd actually put my phone into the holder on my car, and I just did like chatted about it, and it was I felt so surreal. And every single day driving from the Hotel La Barre City, which is just off the Gare du Nord in central Le Mans, I got to drive down the Mulsanne every day to go to work. How's about that? So that's circuit number 2. The third and final circuit is one that's been on our calendar this year, Spa-Francorchamps. Belgium for me has a place in my heart. I mean, I've commentated in Genk, and also I've commentated in Courvin, which is sort of like the southern part, more towards the German border, in a place called Marienborg. And Spa is smack down in the middle of them. To me, Spa has a lot of history, and it also hosts the Total Energies 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps, a GT3 stalwart event. People might say to me, why am I not saying like David Christie, the Nürburgring Nordschleife? The reason being, I've never been there. Never been there.
Would you like to go?
Definitely. It's on the bucket list. 100%. But for me, it's Hockenheimring, Le Mans, Spa-Francorchamps.
We've mentioned the Nordschleife then. Is there any, if you could limit it down, narrow it down to one circuit you've never been to before but would love to go to, where would you go?
Nordschleife. I mean, I'm part German by descent anyway. And I've actually had invitations from friends of mine to actually be part of the party atmosphere. Go down there, drink Jaegers, Steins, wake up, hair of the dog in the morning. That's what they do. Like, literally, one of my friends, Mario Lugnan, he said, yeah, so we go there, we party the whole time, you know, we'll be cooking the bratwurst on the barbecue, you know, have the fireworks, have the drinks, have a lot of fun, get up 8 o'clock in the morning, still drink more beer. So, and I said to him, so effectively, your main source of hydration is either Jaeger bombs or beer. Yeah. He said maybe a little schnapps along the way too. But Nürburgring Nordschleife, you know, places like Flugplatz, München, Carousel, Döttinger Höhe, you know, see cars go down there at absolute breakneck speed. That's one on the bucket list. That's one track I really want to go to at some point in the not too distant future.
You've got experience in motorsport commentary and in sim racing commentary.
Yeah.
Would you say, are there any skills in particular that are transferable, and maybe are there any skills that are exclusively, this is sim racing, this is motor racing?
Yeah. Well, let's go on to the differences, first of all. With sim racing, you're sitting at a desk, you've got all the information on a couple of screens. The biggest transfer, the biggest difference between that and real life racing, say if I'm at a karting circuit, I have windows on the commentary box on. I can see the whole track. So I'm not just looking at the live stream screen that I've got in front of me, or the live timing on the laptop or whatever. It's very, I wouldn't say the term claustrophobic, but you're constricted in terms of the space that you have. You're working either at a location where you're probably not going to see the light of day that much, and you're looking at screens. You can't see anything outside of what is in your peripheral vision. But the majority of skills, like preparation for events, I mean, one phrase that has always stuck, well, there's two phrases, one that I can't really repeat because there are a few slight expletives in there, but not to the point where, basically, if you'll understand this, the 7 Ps. Mm-hmm. Or the other one that my dad said to me very, very early on when I started in motorsport: fail to prepare, prepare to fail. You need to be just as much on e-sport, on sim racing, and on real life racing. I mean, when we came here to Middelfart this weekend, what was one of the things I prepared? Virtual Championship Excel spreadsheet. Driver teams and lists and all that kind of stuff, and then we've got like a pit stop chart that we can fill in, actually from our computers here. So a lot of it is very transferable. I think also one of the other biggest differences is how to read between the lines a little bit, because they're very, very different in terms of the personalities. There's a lot of drivers in sim racing that are very, very well known in social media. The likes of Jardier, Jaroslav Honzik, Niels Neuox from BMW Team G2 Esports, Martin Stefanko from Williams Esports, who was running alongside Jardier at Virtual GP. I have to give a shout out to my good friend from the Czech Republic, Lukáš Redl, who runs it and actually does quite a good job as well. He does a lot of the broadcast stuff, a bit like Peter does here at GTR. But I think a lot of it is very, very transferable, but you have to be very, very mindful of your audience at times. You have to read the situation. But when it comes to commentary, like with how we had last night, I mean, it was when we started working all four of us together, you can tell that even in an esports or sim racing environment, when you're actually with people, than rather being at your home on a computer, and the only way that you can see people is via a Google Meet or a Zoom call or whatever on the other side of a webcam, there is still quite a lot that transfers from real life commentary to esports.
And let's say 15, 20 years ago, you know, when you're, maybe this is not quite in the equation just yet, but if you could go back to your younger self, what's a piece of advice you would give?
Keep pushing. Don't give up. Follow your dreams. Work hard. Work, even if you have to work for free. You put the effort in, you will get so much back as an answer for it. You reap what you sow, as they say. That's the only thing that I would give. There would be that and one other piece of advice. Learn from your mistakes. Always learn. Because no commentator is perfect. We all know that. We're all human. We have emotions. Sometimes things do get a little bit of the better of us, let's say. But that's what I'd say to my younger self 15 years ago.
So unfortunately now I've got to round it off with a Kieran's cliche question.
Oh,
I know. I'm afraid so. So
I didn't see that one coming.
No one ever could. So your music device of choice is broken, and it's only playing one song on repeat. Best case scenario, what is that song?
Oh, that's a very, very interesting question. Okay. Jamiroquai, Space Cowboy.
There you go. Well, maybe not the song I was thinking, but an insight.
Well, I'm a man of many musical tastes, but JK, full on petrol head. You know, why not just have music from a very much like-minded individual? And funny enough, a last bit of trivia before I go. JK actually was at the same public school as me and was 2 years above. That's interesting.
And where else are you going to find that other than the GTR24H podcast? This is why you tune in. Alex, it's been a pleasure to talk to yourself. Thank you for taking the time to take us through the journey of what makes Alex Goldschmidt from Middelfart, to Middelfart, from all the way in England. It's been a heck of a journey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, never a chore, Kieran.